As soon as I entered the trading floor, I was left absolutely gobsmacked. It felt like I was a part of a movie set. It was honestly love at first sight. What's up guys? It's good to be back with another video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about my first day at Goldman Sachs. Now, why am I talking about my first day at Goldman Sachs? Because on my first day itself, there were some pretty interesting and cool stories that came out of that day. And there were a few very important learning lessons that I took away after my first day was over that helped me tremendously in becoming a top performer when I was working at Goldman Sachs at the New York headquarters for 2 years between 2016 and 2018. So this was the time when I was doing a winter internship with Goldman. This was a winternship, as Goldman called it, between February and March. So it started on the 22nd of February in 2016 and ended on the 18th of March. So a 4-week winternship. And I actually talk about this in more detail in my last video, and also talk about how this winternship was what helped me in finally getting a full-time offer from Goldman a few months after the end of that winternship. So I reported to the building fairly early in the morning. I think this was around 8 o'clock in the morning, and spent the first couple of hours in the morning finishing off all the onboarding formalities, all the paperwork that's typically associated whenever you're starting out at a new company. So I finished all of that, and this was around 10:30 in the morning that I finally entered the trading floor, the 4th floor in Goldman's New York office, which is where I would be spending the next 4 weeks. And trust me, as soon as I entered the trading floor, I was left absolutely gobsmacked. The environment at the trading floor was so captivating. It was honestly love at first sight for me. It was very, very busy as well, only because I had entered at 10:30. The markets open at 9:30 in the morning, and the first couple of hours after trading opens is frenetic, is absolutely frantic. And as soon as I entered, I actually felt that, you know what, this is something that I've seen in the movies. It felt like I was a part of a movie set. But it's not just the noise that was present. I think the sheer size of the trading floor as well left me absolutely gobsmacked. It was, I would say, the size of around 2 football fields put together. So there are a few pictures as well that I'm showing on my screen right now. I'm not sure if these pictures do justice to the high octane environment of a trading floor, but this is the best that I could find. But you can see, from the pictures that there's absolutely no hiding place on a trading floor. After entering the trading floor, I proceeded to my desk. To give you guys some context, I was working on the equity derivatives structuring desk during my winter internship. I met my manager. He was a Georgia Tech alumnus as well, Georgia Tech being the college that I went to. And I talk about my journey to getting that internship in further detail in the video that I talked about. My manager introduced me to all members within the team, after which he gave me an option pricing model script. And this was a script that was written in SecDB, SecDB being Goldman's proprietary language. He asked me to try making sense of it and mentioned to me that he's available for help, but he just put me in the deep end of the pool and told me that my job during my first few days at the winter internship would be to familiarize myself with SecDB, Goldman's proprietary language, and to try making more sense of the option pricing model script that he had given me, which was a pretty long script. So I sat down at my desk and tried making some sense of it, but to be completely honest, my computer science skills were fairly rusty, only because I hadn't taken too many computer science classes in college. Despite being an engineer, I think it was only 2 or 3 classes in computer science that I had taken in college, and that too during my first couple of years. So it had been quite some time since I had done any coding or been exposed to any piece of code, and so it was sort of hard for me to actually wrap my head around that script, and so I was struggling a bit initially. But what helped me a lot was that there was this guy who graduated from MIT who was sitting to my left, and this guy hadn't been at the firm for too long. He had started only 3 months before the start of my winter internship, and I became friends with him. We hit it off instantly. He was a big Manchester United fan as well, so we got talking about football, about Manchester United, because that's the club that I support very, very ardently. And he was able to help me a lot, especially getting over some of the initial humps that I was experiencing in the script, and so I was able to make a bit of headway because of getting help from him. So that brings me to the first lesson, which is very, very important, and not just important if you're working in finance, or if you're working in investment banking, or if you're working on the trading floor. I think this applies to everyone, regardless of what kind of job you might be working in. Become friends and start building long-term relationships with people, with your colleagues, especially with people who are at your level. So your peers, or maybe people who are just one rung or two rungs above your level, because these people will be your lifesavers on many occasions. It's a give and take relationship. Oftentimes you might be in need of help and they come to your rescue, and sometimes you'll repay the favor by coming to their rescue as well. And so it's very important for you to actually become friends with people within your analyst class, within your peer group, within your peer set, because as I said, it's a symbiotic relationship, it's a synergistic relationship, and both parties help each other by virtue of the give and take relationship that you enter into. After this new friend of mine helped me a fair bit, especially getting past the initial few humps, it kept me busy for the next 2 or 3 hours trying to decipher that option pricing model. But then I ended up hitting a roadblock again, and I was just beginning to get a bit frustrated. So that's when I thought that, instead of just like staring at the computer screen and not being able to make head or tail of it, let me perhaps introduce myself to a couple of people who were not present, who were off the desk when Russell Elliott, my manager, had first decided to actually introduce myself to all the members within the team. So I thought, it's going to be a nice breather, it's going to be a nice break. So let me just get off my desk and introduce myself to the people who weren't quite present when Russ was doing the initial round of introductions. And so I went over to their desks, and this brings me to my second lesson, which is that you have to show courage, you have to have balls on a trading floor. Not just the trading floor, I think in any work environment. I think instead of you being passive, right, and waiting for people to come to you and introduce themselves to you, you can take the initiative, you can take the lead and go and introduce yourself to these people. You might think that, it's a very small thing, it's a very minor thing, but trust me, people do notice these things. People might remember that, yes, Anubhav was the person who on his first day, despite being very nervous and perhaps very intimidated by the trading floor, came up to my desk and introduced himself to me. And despite the fact that, everyone was probably seeing him as well, only because, as you could tell from the picture of the trading floor, there's absolutely no hiding place, no partitions on the trading floor. So people do notice these things. And I think that helped me a lot, only because people thought that, yes, this guy means business. This guy is a serious contender, and he isn't just passive fucking wimp who's come to our trading floor, who's trying to enter our family. Now, one of the people that I'd walked up to introduce myself was this person named Bradley Lyons, who was then an associate on the floor. He later became a VP. I think a year later, he became a vice president. He's no longer at Goldman, but I went up to Bradley, introduced myself, and Bradley asked me, so what are you doing right now? And I just told him nothing. So he said, do you want to get lunch? I said, sure. So we went up to the cafeteria. We got lunch, we got chatting, we started talking about our respective backgrounds, and Bradley was asking me what I've been up to during the first half of the day. And so that's when I was telling him, I'm trying to wrap my head around this option pricing model script. And Bradley told me that he's an expert in SecDB. Like, he's the go-to person for most people on the trading floor whenever they have questions on SecDB. And he told me that he has tons of resources, a ton of documentation, which will make my life much easier when I'm trying to understand any script that's written in SecDB, which is Goldman's proprietary language. And so I got back to the desk. As soon as we got back to the desk, Brad sent me all the resources that he was talking about, which brings me to lesson number 3, which is the fact that knowing where to find help is a skill. Trust me, when you're working full-time, right, it's very different from what the scene is like in college. In college, oftentimes professors often handhold you, they spoon feed you, they tell you, okay, this is the chapter where you go learn about this, this is the page where you can learn about this. But in the office environment, you're often left dry, you're often thrown in the deep end of the pool, and you don't quite know where to start, like where do I get help from, right? So you're supposed to figure shit out yourself. And when I say figure shit out yourself, I don't quite mean trying to conquer everything alone. A big part of figuring shit out yourself is knowing where you can actually get help. Knowing that resources do exist is just a matter of finding those resources. And so Brad ended up becoming my savior on that day, perhaps for the rest of the internship as well, only because whatever resources and documentation that he had shared with me helped me tremendously over the course of the entire 4 weeks, because a big chunk of my time during those 4 weeks was actually dedicated to SecDB and dedicated to working on that option pricing model script. So I would go on to spend pretty much the entire day trying to understand that script. Remember, as I mentioned earlier on in the video, it was a fairly long script, but I was fairly happy with the progress and the headway that I had made. So it was around 7 p.m. that the trading floor started clearing out, and I remember sitting there and I was taking it all in. And that's one of the reasons why I remember my first day so vividly, remember all the encounters, all the interesting encounters, all the meetings that took place during my first day so vividly, is only because I had made sure to spend time in solitude at the end of the day trying to relive everything that happened during that day. Had I not done that, had I not spent that time in solitude, I probably wouldn't have been relating this story to you. But as you can probably tell, it was pretty much love at first sight with the trading floor. I felt right at home, especially as an adrenaline junkie. I felt that, you know what, this is exactly the place to which I belong. What's funny is how my feelings and my emotions evolved from that first day until the end of the winter internship. Of course, when first starting out, you have a lot of nervousness, you have a lot of trepidation, right? But soon, from all that nervousness, from all that trepidation, I started feeling a sense of nervous excitement, right? So I went from pure nervousness to nervous excitement, and as the winternship progressed, the proportion of excitement in that equation of nervous excitement kept increasing, and the proportion of nervousness in that equation of nervous excitement kept decreasing. So I went from only nervousness to nervous excitement to more excitement and less nervousness progressively as the winter internship went on. So hopefully you enjoyed everything that I talked about my first day at Goldman Sachs during my winter internship. Hopefully you learned a fair bit from some of the lessons as well that I talked about, that I had learned during that winternship, specifically during that first day. But please, you guys tell me, what kind of content do you guys want to watch? I think by now you guys have a good sense of what my background is like, what my experiences have been like. So how can I help you guys? I definitely want to build a very strong community in this channel, a community in which we all grow together. So tell me what kind of content could be about Goldman Sachs, could be about professional development, could be about investment banking, could be about careers, could be about anything, could be about fitness as well, which is something I'm very addicted to, could be about podcasts, which definitely means a lot to me, which will be an integral part of this content. But you guys tell me, comment in the comment section telling me what kind of content do you think you will benefit from the most, and I'll take every single suggestion into account. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do so. Honestly, when I see a lot of engagement on my channel, when I see the number of subscribers increasing, when I see people liking my videos, sharing my videos, commenting on my videos, then it definitely keeps me really motivated to keep producing value-adding content for you guys on a consistent basis. So a small gesture from your side, could be a like, could be a comment, could be a share, could be a subscribe, will definitely go a long way in increasing my motivation and giving me the impetus to keep providing value to this community. So please consider subscribing. I know I mentioned this a couple of times earlier on in the video, but my next video will talk about the trading floor environment in further details, specifically the trading floor environment at Goldman Sachs' New York headquarters. And I'll talk about why the trading floor can be a very humbling experience, why it separates the men from the boys and the women from the girls. So stay tuned by subscribing to my channel. Thank you so much for watching this video. Until next time, cheers.